This is the Straight Up Breakdown Podcast with Greg Smith and Jay Foreman. Tell it to me straight up.
Hello. Welcome into the Straight Up Breakdown Podcast, proudly part of the Hale Varsity Network. I am Greg Smith, your too many Reese Cup eating, so I had to run on a treadmill this morning, friend.
I am Jay Foreman, your newly crowned Peloton brother. Just made the purchase, so I am into the Peloton cult or crew now. I don't know how long that's going to last, but that is me, your co-host. If I have a heart attack after the first workout, I will be a deceased co-host.
All right. Okay, I was going to say, will you have somebody call me for pushing you into this? You said it right the first time. It is a cult. Those of you that are listening that have a Peloton or know somebody that has one, you definitely understand that.
It's like a snobby cult, though. It's like a snobby cult because it's quite the price tag.
Yeah.
And you're up in the Swiss Alps and doing all this stuff. And
so did you get? Okay, so which one? What did you get?
I got the older model because they're coming out with a new one. And
yeah,
it drops.
they got the bike. The Bike Plus is coming out with the swivel screen and all that.
Yeah, so I didn't get that. I went to. I'm a used car guy, so that's what I did. So
you have the same. I have the one that you got.
Yeah,
I can't wait for you to get it.
You're gonna be waiting a little while.
Let's say probably it's gonna be a minute.
It's gonna be a minute, and I'm still kind of going back and forth. I lost a lot of sleep thinking about what the pain that I'll be going through trying to ride one of those things.
I'm telling you, it is. I say this to everyone because I was in this same boat when I got it. It's harder than you think.
Oh, I know
it's harder. Like it really is. And they have like low impact rides and stuff like that for a reason. Take advantage of those, but it's definitely hard.
It's just a matter. It's not only the rides that I know is going to be hard. Because I went to a couple cycling classes and I was like, broke off.
Okay.
But it's a matter of just sitting on that seat that jams me up, man.
Yeah, you could get. We ended up getting
I got to get the
cover.
deluxe. Yeah,
we got a cover because it's not. It's just uncomfortable.
Right.
And they say that you get used to it or whatever. Like if you look at like the Facebook page or Reddit or something.
No, I ain't getting used
to
that.
But no, it's. Just get a cover.
Yeah, you ain't breaking me in like they do them cowboys, like
eventually you get
Yellowstone.
Right now my butt is asleep. Like
it's not happening.
No, none of that. But okay, I'm excited for you. I'm happy that you are a part of the cult. We'll talk offline about like favorite instructors, and I'll give you some tips because I already know some people that throw you in the deep end, and we go ahead and get this thing cracking. And then I'll be waiting until you give me that angry phone call when you finally do those classes. So. Today it's interesting. We had a whole pod last week in which we previewed the Wisconsin game, and now it feels weird that
nothing even happened.
Nothing to respond to.
What happened was Nebraska won 77-0. It was the greatest game in Nebraska history. It should be a W, so that's the way we need to. Everybody played well. Adrian Martinez threw for 300 yards.
And he ran for 120.
And ran for 120.
Okay.
Three touchdowns, 3 touchdowns in the air, 2 on the ground. He went 24-25, so that way he upped the Wisconsin quarterback. And, not only did we then on defense, we had, 8 sacks and 2 picks, 1 for a touchdown.
There you go. It was a nice week for Nebraska.
We back, baby.
Yeah.
We back.
It was like Texas back or Michigan back.
We don't got the quarterback up there singing, talking about we back, and then hopefully we can back it up by going and winning against Northwestern instead of being like, or like Texas or Michigan and go up and land.
I saw a poll over the weekend, and so I didn't think about this ahead of time, but like it's funny, which one is worse? The whole Texas is back or Michigan is back? Which one of those is worse to you?
Let's break that down.
Because we get both each year. Like every year we get them both.
I think Texas because and this was 2 years ago, I think, after they beat Georgia, and it was an impressive
Sugar Bowl, was it?
Yeah, and it was an impressive win. And the fact that Texas alone, as far as their ability to recruit, it's just a plethora of athletes, size, weight, speed, guys that are ready-made, and they just can't even get over the hump. They just never can get out of their own way.
Right.
I mean, they're still up there going neck and neck, going into overtime against Texas Tech and stuff like that. I think it's worse because any glimpse of doing anything well, they really believe they're back. Michigan just says it just because they,
But also, Michigan has been better than Texas.
Over.
It's funny. I think that Michigan has been better than people think they have.
Or give them credit
for. But the problem is, and it's a big problem, is they cannot beat Ohio State.
Right.
And they struggle with Michigan State as well. As you saw them lose to Mel Tucker and the boys this weekend. But I think the losses against Ohio State, and there's been a couple bad ones in there too,
overshadows everything.
And then
they
had
the special teams mishap against Michigan State at home. I think it was a night game or turned into
the punt.
Yeah. So they've lost some games and lost obviously rivalry games and just they've been embarrassed and it's hard because where Michigan was before Harbaugh got there is definitely in a better place. They just haven't even they're not even close to getting over that hump to competing with Ohio State. Except for I will say this, 2 years ago, I think they beat Ohio State. I think it was home cooking when they gave up JT Barrett on that 4th and 1. He didn't even look close. So, and people forget that because in the next year they just blew them. The next 2 years they blew them out. And it's hard for people to understand when you have I think they had 12 guys drafted.
Yeah, I was going to say I don't think people realize that. Yeah. I didn't know that until
every year they get a ton of guys drafted.
LSU had the most guys drafted last year. Michigan, I believe, had the second most guys drafted from a school last year.
Right, and then and even before they've always put guys in the league, and you can't beat Ohio State, which people are forgetting. Ohio State they're just not doing the mass numbers like 10 or 12. Mm-hmm. They're going 6. Okay, we'll do 8.
But they'll do 6 or 8, and
they'll be
2 or 3 of them will be the top 10 picks.
Yeah, be top 10 picks. Right. So, and then plus when they've always had better quarterback play. That's the biggest thing that's plagued Michigan. Whereas when you look at Texas, they have a legit quarterback. They have legit skill players and linemen. They just have bad coaching, bad culture. I think it's a little bit of a hangover. They can't get out of their own way. So I think it's worse when they say it because they're not as close as they think they are, and they should be closer, especially in the Big 12.
The conference, in
the Big 12, they should be more dominant. Whereas Michigan is saying it after just one victory, which they were pretty impressive against Minnesota. And Michigan State was not impressive when they lost to Rutgers and went out there and just in a matter of a week in college football, they looked like a totally different team. Looked uninspired. Defense looked and I like their defensive coordinator.
I like Don Brown.
And I like the way things he's done. They just didn't look good. But you know what? To be honest with you, when you look back at that Minnesota game, some of the things that Michigan State was able to do, Minnesota did a little bit, but just not on that scale. Right. As far as in Michigan has always had good system cornerbacks, not like to the level of Ohio State where you're having a guy going number 3, and then the guy that was supposed to go, late in the second round ends up, going into the first round and end up performing just as well. So you had 2 guys go, top 20. Their defensive backs aren't as good as they have been. I think they're very young. And they don't have that one dominant defensive lineman this year, up front where, you had a Gary and these other guys. They got a couple guys that are here and there, and their defensive backs are a little bit struggling because their pass rush isn't up there to the snuff, and they can't blitz as much because the guys can't cover down on their back. Yeah,
it'll be interesting to see where that kind of goes from here. First of all, one of the things I think we can safely say so far, in all of college football, but in particular in the Big Ten, is that we're gearing up for a crazy year. And it's going to be funny because it's going to be all sorts of, in my opinion, all sorts of crazy games and results and upsets. Except for with Ohio State. Right. You'll see, I think that they're going to steamroll through they're going to do what they do. They did it again this weekend against Penn State. If you're a Nebraska fan, I actually think you should be even more encouraged that Justin Fields, incompleted 4 passes against Penn State. So it's not like he was any different than he was against Nebraska.
Against a better overall defense.
Yeah, he got better against a better opponent. Which I think is, going back and rewatching some of that Ohio State-Nebraska game, I was even more impressed with Justin Fields because I think that, and kind of less harsh on the Nebraska defensive game plan, because I think what Nebraska was hoping for is that eventually he would make a mistake or make the wrong decision, and it just didn't happen.
Yeah.
And not only that, all of his passes were on point. Because I'm watching what I was joking about on Twitter about, because I was joking, but I was serious. I woke up excited for that Iowa Northwestern game.
Right.
That was my game of the day. I was fired up, and I feel like I needed help after saying that. People were sending me tweets saying I needed an intervention. But I was ready for that game because it was a game that was going to show you a lot about both of those teams. But it was funny watching them and seeing like regular quarterbacks play versus what we saw the week before in Justin Fields, where they're actually those guys, were missing open receivers and all of that stuff. But it ended up being a pretty good game too. That Northwestern makes that nice comeback after being down 17-0, where Iowa continues to do this weird thing, and it's been consistent through Ferentz's time there, where they just get too conservative sometimes, and their offense just disappears for long stretches.
Right. They go 3 and out quick.
Yeah, where they get 2 yards on 3 rushes.
Right.
And the defense is back out there. But the problem, I think, for Iowa this year, and it'll be interesting to see it play out through the season, is they don't have those erasers anymore. Like, so Epinesa is gone on that defense to completely change the game for them. They're not as explosive on offense this year either. So that will be, Nate Stanley was a guy that wasn't he wasn't a superstar, but he was the perfect Iowa quarterback.
He was a perfect Iowa quarterback, and he was
good.
He was good.
Just a solid good.
Right. He probably did more things that went unnoticed as far as, getting him in and out of plays, being on rhythm, and also playing well at times for not long stretches, but good stretches to where the defense could, play off of that, and then they could take over. Then he could, because he'd always have that one game or two in the middle of the season where you look like you should be at Division III.
Right.
But then he would come back the next week and play well. And he was a starter for 3 years. Mm-hmm. So that's a lot of reps, a lot of Ferentz was showing up at the stadium comfortable with him.
Yeah.
Everybody else was. So the guys that were graduating and coming in and building themselves up, you had one guy that you knew that was the quarterback. So you're transitioning from a new leader on the offensive side of the ball and your team, and then also you don't have your eraser on defense, because with AJ on the defensive side, he not only was somebody you had to game plan for. If you watched Iowa last year, every big moment, he did it in Nebraska. He did it last year on the road at Northwestern. He could be like y'all you're waiting for him because he had a first round grade. You're waiting for him to dominate, and he would do some stuff. He might blow up a couple pulling guards and the other linebackers and make the play, right? So that's a play that when I look, that looks like a play that I grade just as high as him getting a tackle for loss. Right. But when it came down to making the play or making a play, every game last year that when Iowa needed a play from the defense, he made the play. And when they don't have that kind of messes up your whole dynamics of your team. Yep. Because he answered the bell every single time. And so until somebody develops into that role, they're going to struggle. Then you don't have the big mountain mover on at the left tackle where if you needed 2 yards, you could pretty much run left and run zone. You can run power there, and he's going to blow a hole in your defense. So, they're in a transition year, and usually what people are used to is Iowa pulling out those games. Northwestern is kind of like Iowa. They were, record-wise, they were down last year, so you knew that they were going to really come back this year and play well. Their offense looks explosive. Ramsey as their quarterback is pretty decent. I think he's a little bit better than people thought. And, they seem to always have a good running back. Like a guy that can make things happen. Jackson is still at San Diego doing work. I watched him. He's a good player. Obviously, Nebraska, almost had him. And then you got the guy they have is just almost a replica. So I think their offensive line has always been underrated. I think their defensive line has always been underrated because they all kind of look the same. It's just every year they look the same.
Yeah, and I actually texted a friend of mine that both teams in a lot of ways. Now, Iowa, like we were saying, missing a couple of those big time players. They just have to develop that and get back to that, I'm sure, eventually. But both teams, Iowa and Northwestern, if I put on that game this year, or if I put that game on 3 years or 4 years ago, it feels like the same thing. And that's that's not a knock on them. That's
actually a compliment.
What they do,
because
they just continue to be able to replicate their system and what
year
they
in and year out. And that's what you want. And really, to be honest with you, that's what a lot of Nebraska fans are wanting as well, which is, year to year, you want to see guys in the uniform that's going to look the same. You know what you get, because I think those two teams more than any other in the top half of the Big Ten. So when I talk about the top half, you think of like Michigan, Ohio State, Penn State, whoever else, Iowa and Wisconsin, and then still in that top half when you're thinking Iowa and Northwestern, and in this case also Purdue, when they pull up to each stadium, whether, they look in the mirror and they know that they're a 6, they're happy with that 6. You know what I'm saying? And so they're going to play that level, and they're going to try to get you to play ugly or play their type of ball. And that's how you see that they're able to compete and then also upset some teams because they play their brand of football. They develop their players. Everybody's there for one common purpose and one reason. And let's face it, Northwestern, as much as they've kind of pumped some money into their football program, still isn't to the level of where Wisconsin and Nebraska and Iowa is facility-wise. You know what I'm saying?
Like overall, yeah.
Overall, and then with the academics, it's a little bit harder to recruit. So they have to do things differently, but they fell in love with it. You know what I'm saying? And with Fitzgerald there, he's a homegrown guy. He knows what it takes to win there, and has done some really good things there and developed some players. So they're always going to be a tough out.
But what's also good too about what each of those teams can do, and it also is, and this is exactly what Nebraska is trying to do, is that when you have success like that, like repeatedly with the same types of players, what you can do is you can go to the next guy and recruit them because you have examples of somebody that we did this with. So if you're going, this is happening. There's a big time kid in Iowa, Caden Proctor, he's the 2023 offensive line recruit. When Iowa goes to recruit him, they'll say, hey, we know that you like Tristan Wirfs as a kid, and you saw him as a kid that's from this state. You saw him. You saw what we did with him. That's what we can do with you. Right. Or they can pick another offensive lineman that they've had that with, right? And so when you start to Northwestern can do that with inside linebackers. Sure. Patty Fisher was here for 22 years. Yeah. You saw what we would do. I don't know how that dude is not 42 years old. Like, I just don't know. It feels like Patty Fisher has been there forever. Yeah. But, like, you can do that on and on. And that's really what Nebraska has to get to, where they can start to tell guys on the recruiting trail where you have those examples of, hey, here's and actually one of the spots that is, I think, maybe starting at is running back, because you already have the great running back tradition at Nebraska. And obviously Ryan Held is very familiar with that. But then you can also say, we got Divine Ozigbo. He was here when we got here. We helped make him into an NFL back. Dedrick Mills came right after that. We're going to get him to be an NFL back, provided I think he is going to be an NFL back. And then you can start to build that up. It also takes time. It does take time. Because one of the things that those three programs that we mentioned, Iowa, Northwestern, Wisconsin, one of the things that they all kind of have in common too is that continuity. They've been doing that program and system.
They've been doing the same thing and then adding to it years and years and years. And they've when you look at it, they've had one head coach. In our time of really evaluating them, right?
22 years.
Fitzgerald and Ferentz, right? So, and then obviously Brom staying there when he's at other, and I'm bringing Purdue in here is giving them stability because his personality is seeping down into his players and his program, and I saw it when they played Ohio State that time, and they were lifting weights at the day of the game, and getting in there and getting after it. And when you think about Fitzgerald and what he's done at Northwestern. And what I wouldn't say is concern for Nebraska, but also you got to go into this game not thinking, all right, this is the same old, Northwestern. And compared to what he's done, what Nebraska's done as far as, when we talk about developing players or positions when you're going out on the recruiting trail. So it started out just as linebackers, right? Then you seen Dean Lowry coming in. I'll tell you, when Dean Lowry played against Nebraska, he looked like Howie Long. His whole draft tape was against Nebraska, right? Because I think Dylan Utter is still having nightmares of being bent over backwards by Dean Lowry. Yeah. So then also you're starting to see some offensive linemen get drafted. Now late. Yep. So now you're starting to see some sort of kind of like Nebraska of the old days. It's not just one position. Now you're starting to see 2 and 3 going there. So how does that compare to Nebraska? And I'll take Iowa, for example, with Noah Fant being a first-round pick and Hawkinson being a first-round pick, now look at the guy that they got there now that's going to – I don't know if he's going to be a first-round pick, but he's going to be drafted. Good, yeah. So back in the day, it was just – Iowa was just offensive linemen and then the underrated defensive linemen like Mike Daniels and Adrian Claiborne and all those guys, real technical guys, right?
And then guys that will go maybe late. Chad Greenways from linebacker,
right.
like some guys like
just
that.
And then you throw in your Dallas Clark that was like a stupid athlete, and Kittle that they look like they're 215 and they beef them up to 230 and they can run.
Right.
But I'm talking about Iowa was primarily offensive line, but now you're starting to add different positions. And when I said it a couple years ago, once Iowa starts getting some speed on the outside, we in trouble.
Which is what is starting to happen. And it's bad timing for them and bad move for him. Smith Brissett, I think the wide receiver, their best wide receiver, actually got arrested over the weekend, operating while intoxicated, and he's like suspended indefinitely, which is going to be a huge blow for them.
Yeah, because he's the guy
he hurt
us last year. He was the big. He stretches the defense. And conversely, when we're talking about Northwestern coming up this week, once Northwestern can get some skill position, that's players that are legit. Defensive side of the ball, I think they do well because they know to play in that system, so they never get out of position. You know what I'm saying? So you don't necessarily, they're not going to have like a first round, pick, like Ohio State with Wade and all those guys. But they're going to have good system players that eventually maybe get drafted, right?
Right.
What they're trying to morph into is to have position players or skill players on the offensive side of the ball to be more explosive, because that's always kind of been Northwestern's Achilles heel. They're always going to be in the game because they play good defense and special teams.
Yeah, and they're so fundamentally sound that they're not beating themselves.
Right, and the offensive line will be good, but if they just don't have any like speed or guys out there in the threats, it's usually always like a little slot. Because if you think 2 years ago when Nebraska lost to them 34-31, it was like the one guy had 200 yards. He was like a little slot receiver.
I blocked that kid's name out, but I know what you're talking about.
He just killed Nebraska, right? So they don't have anybody on the outside as of yet. Now this year they have a little bit of a running game and kind of like a little, I call him a little water bug in the slot. So what Nebraska has to do, as far as when you start to think about the game, they're going to have to try to control the line of scrimmage. It's going to be a tall task because Ohio State is probably the biggest task as far as showing up to a game and winning a physical battle. Northwestern is going to be there, maybe not as physically as far as like being as strong and stuff like that, but they're a veteran group, especially on the offensive side of the ball. They've played a lot of games together. So even though they weren't up to snuff last year, they're better this year, and you can see it when you watch them play. So from a technical standpoint and testing your fundamentals, and then also with a young defensive line, because let's face it, you got Ty Robinson and Casey Rogers, who are, in my opinion, should be starting along with Daniels, right? Mm-hmm. Okay, Stilly's in there, so be it. But you got two guys that hadn't played much going against guys that have played a lot. Right. So there's going to be things that they know how to do as an offensive line, these little tricks of the trade. So what's going to happen is, are you going to get out of your technique to try to make a play because you got beat a couple times, or can you stay the course? And so that's a big test for them. And then the defensive line of Northwestern is always going to be strong. They're always going to be physical. They're going to be in shape, and they're going to play hard, and they're going to run to the ball. Yep. And the lanes are going to be filled. Where we're going to have to beat them is we're going to have to try to establish some sort of running game from the running back. You know what I'm saying? And here's why, is because the way that you kind of have to attack Northwestern is you got to attack their strength, which is going to be like their seven, the front seven, their second level. Because if you can get them with play action passes, you can soften that middle up. That's when you can get Wandell Robinson in there, and he's a matchup problem no matter who he's going against. Right. Because on the outside, we just haven't seen it. Obviously, with only one game, a development to stretch the field and be more of a threat. So if you can kind of work, I always call it work back, right? Whereas you set up and attack their strength, it's going to make their outside weaker. So then the outside can actually start to get, a little bit of breathing room to get off press coverage and to be more of a threat. Because if you can get guys to run routes that they know, i.e. Omar Manning or anybody else, to get out there and kind of not strike fear, but make
them think.
But make them think. Be like, because I know the Ohio State guys, when those guys were running out there, like, man, I can cover this dude, my back pedal. Go ahead and cover somebody else.
Right.
And if you catch a 5-yard hitch, okay, so be it.
Right.
We need some guys out there that are able to, break a tackle, get some yards after catch, but we can't do that until we get a legit running game and establish some sort of physicality at the line of scrimmage. To then that, which obviously will set up the quarterback run game and the play action, but we won't be able to win this game trying to run the quarterbacks the whole time in the running backs, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 carries, and have McCaffrey or Martinez or both in there with that type of game plan.
Yeah, what's to me, and it's funny that Ohio State, like you said, is the tallest task, both physically and just skill-wise.
Yeah.
From a physicality standpoint and just trying to match their skill. But Northwestern is like the other teams we've talked, like Iowa, like Wisconsin. Michigan is kind of like this too, where it's the opposite. It's the exact opposite of what Nebraska has been recently. Is a high level of execution team.
Yes.
Right.
Yes.
And so, and especially against Northwestern, Wisconsin's athletes are usually a little bit better than Northwestern's are. But the problem is that they're so fundamentally sound, and they force Nebraska to really play in a way that they don't want to play.
Yeah,
right?
they make
and
you
if
play.
they're not comfortable playing, Nebraska wants to splash play you and be able to make the big play and get these chunk yards. But what Northwestern's defense is so good at, and they've always been good at this, is taking those away and making you earn it. So make you have to sustain that
Drives.
7, 8, 9 play drive. Whereas if you play the odds against Nebraska from the last few years, play the odds, Nebraska's not going to be able to go 7 to 10 plays on a drive because they're going to shoot themselves in the foot. We saw it against Ohio State. Past week against Ohio State. Then it's even more magnified when you play against them because you just have such a small window for error, right? And so that's what I'm curious on. Where has Nebraska grown when it comes to doing those little things, staying on schedule, not missing tackles on the defense side? And I think they did a better job of that against Ohio State. But those are the things, because I think that Nebraska has more athletes than Northwestern.
Always
it's not
has.
some breaking statement or controversial or anything like that. But it's going to come down to, if Nebraska can play with good fundamentals and technique and do the little things and hold up on the line of scrimmage, they can win the football game. It's
not going to be the way you want it.
Yeah, it might be ugly. It may be 24-14 at best. That might be the situation.
And you got to be okay with that.
Yeah, but that actually, if that happens, if we come back here next week and we're talking about a 24-14 Nebraska victory, I'm telling you now, I will say that I'm very impressed with that, because that to me shows me as much growth as if they go out and win 50-10. I think either way is a step in the right direction, because Nebraska just needs wins. So any way that they get them, but some sort of low-scoring defensive game victory would not be a bad thing. Nebraska, that's something that they can build off of, and I think would show a different type of growth in the program. It doesn't have to be, you go from losing to blowing people out. It doesn't have to necessarily be that, especially given the way that they've played and some of the struggles that they've had going forward. But one of the things, too, I want to make mention of a matchup specifically that I'm looking forward to. We were talking about Northwestern's offensive line. They do have a veteran group in 4 of the spots. One of the spots, they're starting left tackle, is actually a true freshman. Did you notice that? Peter Skoronski is something that it sounds like a Northwestern offensive lineman. Yeah. Sorry, Peter, but you do. It's rare that a true freshman would be starting at Northwestern.
It hardly ever happens.
Yeah, you just don't see that for Pat Fitzgerald's team. So him going against Ty Robinson on that line will be a really fun matchup to get to see, and one that we could probably end up seeing for years to come.
Right, at least for the next 2.
Yeah.
Yeah, so, that's going to be, a good – they're right around the same age, and I think that Ty Robinson, obviously with the confidence that he should have taken – from the Ohio State game is going to hopefully pay off against Northwestern. The difference between – I was thinking about when you were saying this, the difference between Ohio State game and Northwestern, or playing a team like Ohio State versus Northwestern, Ohio State makes you play perfect. You have to play the perfect game to beat them where we're at right now. Mm-hmm. It's kind of like if you think back when Purdue beat them or Iowa. Everything you got to play perfect and sound.
And you got to have somebody go off.
You got to have somebody. Yeah, you got to have somebody go smooth berserk, right? Like a career game, which essentially is the reason why Rondale Moore is getting drafted.
Right.
Is that game? So you need that. Where Northwestern makes you do, they make you play almost a perfect game from a physical standpoint, and more importantly, from a mental standpoint. Can you – because they feel like in their typical, Pat Fitzgerald being from Chicago type of mentality yourself, I think I can fight longer than you.
Yep.
How long can you stay in the fight? And it's hard for teams like Nebraska. Nebraska's not the only team, but obviously it plays Northwestern a lot more than, say, even UCF or teams like a Memphis, right? Yeah. Is that they want to win the game 60-59. That's fun to them, right? Or 45-37. That's what they want to do. Or 56-45 45. What they want, they want to go up and down the field, and whoever has the ball last and gets a 2-point conversion, and somebody turns it over, and we get an onside kick and kick a field goal, we win. Well, that's hard because if that's how you want to win, that's probably how you practice. And the difference between us and where we want to be is we want to be multiple, right? So Ohio State has no problem playing against them because that's the way they're built. They'll play. You want to get in the track meet, or you want to get in the slugfest.
They can play
anywhere, and so they can go in all 4 corners of the United States and play in any conference. That's where Nebraska wants to get to. We haven't got there yet. It's a big test for us, as much as us physically. It's just mentally and how we've matured as a program. Can our game plan set up on offense, defense, and special teams to win a game like that? Because really, when you start peeling back the onion, right, against Northwestern and Nebraska, and this is even back to Mike Riley, even when Bo Pelini was here, is that we've always struggled in the 4 minutes. 4 minutes going into halftime, coming out, and finishing the game. Those are the things. It's weird because a lot of times coming out, we're good. Getting towards halftime, kind of stub our toe, start slow. All right, wake up a little bit, and then it comes down to really crunch time.
Not cutting time.
Not cutting time. And we end up kind of falling on our face, and that's where Northwestern wants to get you. They want to slow you down enough to where you make a mistake, and then they take advantage of it, and then the pressure gets on you. And then they get it back, and then they somehow find a way to win the game at the very end. That's the way that he's built that program. That's why you see them when they went like 3-8 last year. They're kind of like Iowa. They can go 3-8 one year. Oh, Kurt Ferentz is ready to get fired, and then next round they go 10-1 or 10-2.
Because they believe that they're always going to come out of the other side of that.
Yeah.
And they've
done it.
Whether it's within one game, like this last weekend when Northwestern was down by 17, and they said, okay, we're just going to hang in here, keep chopping wood, and we'll eventually come back, and they did. Or it's bigger picture where you go 3-8, and then you think, oh, we'll bounce back because we've been here before and we can figure this out. It's just a different level of resolve, and that's also something that you have to start to see Nebraska have.
Exactly.
And it starts with in-game. So it starts with, and this thing that I think everybody kind of feels this way watching this program right now. When a bad thing happens to Nebraska, it feels like it's the beginning of the end for them, and that snowball is going to start in games. They have to stop that. If you can stop that, and the way that you do that is you just have those things go the other way, and then you have that confidence. Because we've talked about this now a few times on the podcast, is that the thing that we would give Nebraska, if we could just give them one attribute, it would just be confidence. And it would help them so much. And part of it is hard to get because they just haven't been able to come through the other side because they've had so much losing and so many bad things that have happened over the last few years.
They've been snake bit, man.
Right. It does feel like that.
They like the Greg Norman of the Big Ten. But what really, if for us, our followers out there, so again, retweet, subscribe, follow, and definitely push. If somebody out there could come up with this thing, and I'm gonna say this right now, so hopefully this gives me a little bit of legal rights. If somebody's already done it, is come up with some sort of analytic of a bounce back percentage. Bounce back percentage for this team, because I know it's low. It might even be in the negative, and a bounce back percentage could be as simple as once we have a drive that stops on offense, right? Let's just talk about the offense. Is like coming out, of the TV timeout, delay a game. What do we do the next drive? Can we get what is the percentage that we get 1 or 2 first downs? Because it's not about scoring. Right. It's about, can you stop the snowball from turning into an avalanche? Right. And then on defense, if we get a pass interference or offsides, how long does it take us to really start to play the type of defense that we played at the beginning of the game?
Right.
Or, you know what I'm saying? How many times after giving up one explosive play do we give up another one in the next series? Or if we could really break it down, i.e. against Ohio State, how many times do we give up the same type of explosive play? The skinny post or leve, right?
Yep.
Or the deep over route. How many times? Because that's what you got to do. That's the maturity start. And that's adjustments. That's coaching. But then really what it comes down to, it's teamwork. Because if me and you are playing linebacker, right, and Coach Rude is over there, and we got, a big old playbook, right? He's on the sideline. Everything that he's done to get us prepared is done Monday through Saturday or Monday through Friday.
Right.
So when we're out there on Saturday, it's Jay and Greg that we have to figure it out. And if we're getting beat on a trap play and we practice it one way and it's just I'm not having a good day, but the only way that I can survive this game and us not to get destroyed on this trap play or power play is that me and you make an adjustment that will in turn raise our bounce back percentage to obviously out of the negative, but to a more realistic, percentage that up to our abilities to win the game. That's what we have to do. Because I'm going to tell you like this. I'm going to tell you guys this. Coaches really don't care how you get it done. Just get it done.
Right. We can talk about it later.
Right. We can talk. I'm going to tell you that one of the best things I ever seen where Bill Parcells was talking about Lawrence Taylor. And they were playing, I think it was either at this time, I think it was the St. Louis Cardinals, or I think they were playing Detroit Lions. And they put in this blitz, and Lawrence Taylor kept messing it up. But they changed the name of the blitz and the name of the defense because he had 2 sacks and 2 strip sacks, forced fumbles, and they scored off.
One of them was a touchdown. Yeah,
one was a touchdown.
Yeah.
So, you know what? Obviously, whatever he's doing is working because he knew one thing. It was wide open. He came in destroying the quarterback. So we have to get to that point to where we have to have more football players and guys that are invested. And I think we're getting there because when you see Casey Rogers and you see Ty Robinson and some of the other younger guys making legit impacts and stuff like that. It's going to be interesting if they can play, more than one game good and then add on to that. I think they will. When you start to see guys like that, it's moving in the right direction. But we need it to move faster, and you need more football players, not guys that are so invested in social media and all that stuff. I mean, I'm not even going to say who's a rapper now, I mean, he just go ahead, he's not representing Eden Prairie to the fullest at all. But I'm just saying you need more guys that are invested because as much as we want to blame the coaches, and of course, if you're making this type of money, you're going to be looked at under a microscope because you're making.
And if you're at this program,
and if you're at this program, and I'm going to get a little bit to that, and I'll cut it off, is that the players have to take ownership as well because it's their team, really, to be honest with you. Scott's like the CEO. Everything trickles down, but you're the guys that go out there and really show people what you've been doing in practice and what he's ideally liking you guys to do. Now, the difference, obviously, as you said, when you're at the University of Nebraska, where it's different than Iowa, Purdue, and Northwestern, is that the expectations are so much higher that you can live through a 3-8 season, or when Kurt Ferentz has those down years when he's like 6-5 or whatever, or 7-5, because really they've never won to the magnitude as Nebraska's won.
Right. This last stretch here for Iowa
is the best
in their program.
Right, and they're not even sniffing a national title.
Not even coming
they're
close.
Not sniffing a New Year's Day bowl game, and if they do, it's because they got their head beat in against Ohio State in the Big Ten championship, and they're going on to the Final Four, and you have to have them at the Rose Bowl. So. Yeah, so you can do that, right? So because organization or athletic department like Northwestern is thinking like, okay, Pat Fitzgerald's played here, he's made the program, he's built the program up. We're going to give him not only 1 year but 2 years to turn it around because 1 or 2 injuries hurts them or should hurt them a lot more than it hurts Nebraska. Right. You know what I'm saying? But it's been conversely. Right. Whereas Northwestern has built this thing up and they've developed players so much that they have a strategic plan. For a guy. So like if I'm a junior and I'm starting, you're taking your redshirt year and your redshirt freshman year to develop, and then if I roll an ankle or something, you're redshirt sophomore and you're the guy coming in. And really, that's the way that Nebraska used to build their program. We've got to get it back to that point. But we have such a young team, it's hurt that a little bit. But I think the expectations allow for teams like Northwestern, those guys, to kind of walk through the muddy waters and still survive, whereas Nebraska and whether it's social media and people up in I think a little bit is social media, but also I think it's because of the fan base, the younger ones. Only thing they know is average. Right. 9 wins. That's average. I mean, when you're if you're at a big program, that's average.
Yeah, when you take in the non-con and
when you're taking a non-con, I mean that's not. I mean it's hard, but at Nebraska, it shouldn't be hard. Now, if you're at Illinois and you were winning that much, I mean, they got the stat.
Build that statue of Levy.
Yeah, Nebraska, that's average, right? So the fan base, the younger fan base, that's all they know. And you know what I'm saying right now? And I know college football, the landscape has changed, but that's all they know. And that's all Iowa's ever known. I mean,
which is why if you have that 11-win season at Iowa It buys you another 5 years.
It buys you in a new contract.
Right.
And, I might go take the Jacksonville Jaguars job. Right. So I don't know who he knows down in Jacksonville, what he's got going on down there. He got some pictures of somebody down there because he's been up for that job 3 times and got 3 contract extensions and survived a scandal, 20-year, racism scandal without even having to really have a press conference. He gave and then COVID helped out as well.
Only because he didn't have to go out in front of people. I still
took
think
a couple
that
classes.
There's going to be more to come off of that Iowa scandal, only because I just can't believe that we're going to come out of that whole thing and just have the strength coach get fired.
No, what I think will happen is Ferentz will never get fired. He'll retire out of nowhere. It'll be like the guy at Michigan State.
Yeah. Just very similar situation.
Right, just like on a Monday. Just like on a Monday.
You look up and you get a press release.
Press release. Like, hold up. Is this a spoof account? Right. You know what I'm saying? So it's one of those things that'll happen out of nowhere. But I don't think it'll be happening anytime soon because he's operating as
if they make it through, it'll be just fine.
And if they start winning,
then it's even.
The more Iowa wins, the less that this voice that they have down there with that $20 million lawsuit, it kind of dissipates and kind of goes away. The less they win, and start looking. Then you're gonna have a guy coming. Hey man, you got 11 o'clock meeting with who? Oh yeah, here comes three of the chancellors. Hey man, we got to start talking about your buyout. So we'll see what happens.
But hey, every week we haven't done this yet. We did a lot of good preview there. Every week we kind of get into what we call our Coach Speak segment.
Coach Speak to Real Talk.
Where we give you something that somebody said in the sporting world, and then we tell them what they really meant. We've talked a lot about rivalries. There was a big rivalry in the NFL this weekend, one of my favorite ones, the Ravens and the Steelers, where the Steelers had another victory where they won 28-24, kind of took down the wonder kid, Lamar Jackson. Lamar, my man, had 4 turnovers.
Yeah, a little sophomore slump,
in this game. Yeah, and so Mike Tomlin, the coach of Pittsburgh Steelers, who I believe is underrated and needs more love, said this after the game. He said, we were talking about Lamar Jackson. We respect him, but we do not fear him. We're not surprised by anything that transpired.
Ooh.
What did he really mean by that?
He respects him because he's a great athlete and he's done some good things, but they've seen things on tape that they knew that they made to come true.
That's
what they're telling you. What they're saying is like everybody else is playing scared of him because he can run the RPO and all this other stuff, but he's really not that good. Yeah, what he's really saying is, you know what? We respect him because he's out here. I'm going to tell you one thing. You respect every single NFL player out there. I don't care if it's the number 1 pick or a guy that just came from Meatloaf State. You respect them because they're there. But there's some guys you go against and you're like, man, you know what? That dude ain't that good.
Or maybe sometimes I think it's a couple things too. I think it's one, the rivalry, I think it makes you want to say stuff like that. But also sometimes you just match up well with people.
Match up well.
Right, and sometimes you do defensively, but man, the way that he said that, because the way that people, and people talk about Pat Mahomes a lot the same way too, where like it's kind of a fear out there, and he's playing great so far this year, but there's a fear that goes beyond that respect. But I think that can sometimes paralyze you a little bit out there because it can also, that gets into your mind.
Right.
Then you thinking, oh, okay, here we go again. He's going to make this play. But if you go out there thinking, hey, man, that's just another dude. Like,
just like Karl Malone said about Michael Jordan. He's like, I got set too. But I'm just telling you what he's saying. He's saying he's not that good, and we fear it. We respect him, but we ain't fearing him. But he really is saying, and I know Mike Tomlin. I know exactly what he's saying. And he's telling his team, this dude isn't that good, and we deserve to win, and we're going to dominate him. But what he's also doing is planting that seed for the next time they play.
Yeah.
Because it's the same thing with Pat Mahomes. The worst thing you could do is go out there and play in fear. We saw it against Ohio State.
Right.
Our guys, if you go out there and play in fear, football players are like wolves or whatever, where you can sense fear. So if you go out there and play it, Pittsburgh ain't scared of nobody. Pittsburgh go down to Kansas City right now today. They just played yesterday. Go there. They ain't gonna be scared of nobody.
Right. And I think that's a key thing though. That's confidence, right?
Yeah, that's
one of the things that we were talking about Nebraska needs more of. You need to know, no matter if we're playing Lamar Jackson, who is out here doing things at the quarterback position that we haven't seen in a while, or the same thing with Mahomes, whichever guy is out there, we have confidence that we're gonna do what we do. and we're going to go out there and we're going to play them straight up and see where it falls.
See where it falls.
And then when you're coming off a game where not only did you beat him, when you create 4 turnovers off of it, you're like, okay, we can really do this thing. And so it'll be a thing where, like, this is kind of not his introduction to the rivalry because he played them obviously last year. But it's kind of one of those ebb and flow things that he's going to have to figure that out. Otherwise, we're going to look up 8 years from now and he'll be, 1-12 against them or something like that.
And that's where, and really to be honest with you, you've seen like Lamar Jackson, he had talked about, certain Kansas City being his kryptonite.
Yeah.
Pittsburgh. Well, you can't worry about Kansas City till you get through Pittsburgh.
Right.
And I'm telling you that Pittsburgh is a place, it's an organization that people should try to replicate in real life and business because their leadership is outstanding.
Yeah, you're talking about culture.
You're talking about culture.
That a lot
that's it.
here. Like
and Mike Tomlin, and they've made some hard decisions. They got rid of a Hall of Fame receiver. The owner went down there and said, "Man, can we salvage this? All right, we got to make a decision." Right. And Mike Tomlin embodies that. And I feel I'm happy for Mike Tomlin because people were like, "Oh, should he get fired?" and all this other stuff. The only person that's ever won more is Chuck Noll.
Right.
And you think Bill Cowher was just there.
Right.
And Mike Tomlin, not only what he does, he doesn't give false confidence. I'd like to be in there every day and see how he's getting with his players because they're taking a lot of guys that are rookies and young guys and having them play in hard positions.
Yeah, they do a good job of getting those guys
developing
ready,
and getting them ready to play. And the standard is the standard, but they're playing with such confidence that it's coming from not only Mike Tomlin but their position coaches. And I'm sitting back and thinking now about when Terry Bradshaw, Mike Tomlin's not a good coach, he's like a motivator. Right. Look, we know where that came from, where the undertones are, but that's the dumbest thing you could say. This dude's winning games.
Right.
You know what I'm saying?
A
lot of games. And you up here trying to tell all he can do is motivate somebody. And they say the same thing about Mike Singletary, but Mike Tomlin has those guys ready to play. Pittsburgh's this type of team, and we just talked about Northwestern, that they're going to bounce back when they have a bad year for them, which was like 8-8.
Right.
Now they're back for real. Ben Roethlisberger's playing, still a little rusty, but playing at a high level, getting distributing the ball all over the place. And once their offense is going with that defense, they're going to be legit. And they just made a big trade for Avery Williamson after. Or from the Jets, and traded for him right after the Jets played the Chiefs yesterday. So, and he's a Pro Bowl type of linebacker. So now they've got the whole lot left by Bush. They got a veteran player that's going to step in there and be ready to play.
So, one thing that has come up, you mentioned the trade, and actually I wanted to take us in that direction for a second because it's a little off the beaten path, but it made me think of something else. We had a conversation kind of on a conference call with our staff just about all of the different trading now that's happening in the NFL, and it feels like it's been increased. But one of the things that I've always wondered about on that is, have you ever seen a situation or even been in this spot where somebody gets traded and then the family doesn't come along with them? Right. So like, does that happen? Like where like, okay, I get traded to Green Bay and we just don't want to go.
Oh, the player don't go?
No, not the player, the family. Like the wife and the kids say, okay, we're going to stay back.
Sometimes.
And then you go and do your thing.
Sometimes. Yeah, sometimes. And you'd be looking at them sideways like, what's going on? But
yeah, because
if you got kids in school, and stuff like that, it's hard, man. It's hard because then also you got to look at how many years you got left on your contract because you can get traded and realistically you're only going to be there for that season.
Right.
And there's only, 8 games left and kids are in school, you're kind of set back and that's where you've kind of made your home. And if you're longer, you're longer tenured, that's where you're going to settle after you get done playing football.
Right.
So there's no reason to up and sell the house. Now, generally you think everybody would go. So it kind of, the family dynamics is different. Now, but I'm going to tell you this, there's some guys, we had a guy that came over. We signed him as a free agent, though, and he came from the Saints. And we played together for 2 years. Yeah, because I was down there for 4. And I was in Houston. I think I might have saw his wife twice, and that was at the Christmas party.
So it does happen.
She never came. She was down in Atlanta.
So it does happen then when, even in free agency, a guy like I sign, and I keep thinking Green Bay because Green Bay is the worst. Like I signed in Green Bay,
right?
But my wife is like, man, you know what? I want to live down in Key West. I just want to stay down there. That does happen where people just say, okay.
Does, but not much.
Okay.
You got the question, why you want to stay in Key West? Because really the season is short. And Green Bay doesn't keep guys up there the whole offseason. And like I said, a lot of it has to deal with the situation of the contract. And when you get traded, it just depends. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. Like, like Avery Williamson going up to Pittsburgh. I mean, if he's married or anything like that, he knows that Bush is coming back next year. Right. Chances of him being there after, this year is probably slim to none. He's coming in there. He's going to play the rest of the season. And I don't know how many years he has left on the contract. Then he's got to go from there, unless they're going to have him start at the other inside position. So, some guys, know that they're getting traded. They get signed to extension. Then their family's going to come. But there's sometimes, like, you see, I mean, it's unique, man.
Yeah, but and that's what I was thinking, because there's all sorts of different situations. So, like, your dad gets traded to the Bills.
Right.
You're not, like, you and your family might not be itching to get there. And it might not even be because of the city. It might, like you were saying, to be because of
and they
the
might just come.
situation.
They might come like only for home games,
yeah.
And go back and forth, and you just battle through it, and that's the way it goes, because you're in school and you just come in for the weekend. Because also you got to think, if you got like kids, wife, and all that, you gone all day.
Right,
Monday,
you're at the facility.
You're
anyway.
at the facility anyways.
Yeah.
And so if they come in on the weekends, you get to see them more. Then they come to the game, and then next thing you know, you're Monday's like a half a day, Tuesday's off. You're missing school. You know what I mean? If you got kids in high school, if they're playing sports, I mean, some of these guys have had families since they've been 18 years old, or kids since they've been 18 years old. So it's a little bit different. You do see some unique situations and different stuff like that. But if people have families, or they're from, say like, you married somebody that you met in college, and you're from, say like Minnesota, Iowa City or whatever, and you got a house there, you know what I'm saying? And you're from there, what's the point of even coming or moving? And what I mean by that, there's a difference. A lot of people will just come for the season.
Right. Are there more people than we realize then that just live in places for the guy? I never really thought about that. Just live there for the season, and then you live somewhere else.
Just depends. It just depends.
Depends on what the city is.
It depends on the city, and depends on, how much you're making, or where you're at in your career. Yeah. If I'm a first round pick, you're going to buy a house. You're there for 5 years. It's guaranteed. Right. Or first, second, third. If you're a guy that's on a 1-year contract, you're living in an apartment or whatever until the season. You're finding out what's going on. And if you're from whatever place, then you're going back there until you call back for the off-season program. So it's a lot different. It depends on the situation. Like when I was in Buffalo, as soon as the season was over, I was heading back to Minneapolis. Uh-huh. I mean, car packed and everything. My cousin used to come. We'd roll through Chicago, spend the night in Chicago, and hit it the next day. Now, as I started to get older and start to play better and start to make a little bit more money, I might keep my apartment, because I know I'm going to be back there and be training. Right. Then when you're down in Houston, that's a great city. It's good weather year round. Then, I signed my contract down there, and then so you're living there year round. One is because you can train at the facility. Two, you like the city. And I've started to make a name for myself. But then once I left Houston, and I kind of knew I could see the light at the end of the tunnel, or the light's about to be turned off at the end of the tunnel, right. That the career is about to be over. That it's, I was just there for the season. And then when I got there for the off-season program, I knew the team was taking care of all that stuff. And so I was, in and out. And so it kind of depends. I mean, I was married at the time. So our wife would, come out and our youngest, or our oldest daughter, who was the only one we had, was come out there for the season and come out for games or go back home or wherever we were staying. So it's a little bit different, man. I mean, it's just kind of depends. And that's the hard thing about NFL, is the hard thing about coaching in college. It's all easy to get on, for these people to get on Twitter, oh, he needs to be fired, or in college, and for the coaches, obviously the players, are still be there because they're in scholarship, or cut this person or this, but doesn't just affect them. It affects everybody in the whole organization. Everybody's got to get up and move, and it's a very unique mindset. Like once I played my first 7 years, and then my last 2 years, where you're a hired gun, you're there to do one thing, and I was always thinking I'm here to do one thing: is put good tape on or put good play on tape. Be on it winning. Obviously you want to get to the playoffs, and then set yourself up for another year to get paid. But then also you're thinking about your benefits, right? So your mind changes. You know what I'm saying? Versus when you get to Buffalo, we were winning. Right. You know what I'm saying? I'm going from winning national championships or being in the hunt to being in the playoffs, and then learning how to be a professional. Go down to Houston, and it's like a total different atmosphere, where my career was taking off, but the team was just a new team. Right. So it's so much different. And the NFL is a different type of mindset. You know what I'm saying? And here's the best example I could give you. One of my guys that I used to watch and mentored me just by when I talked to him a few times. His name was Henry Jones. He played at Illinois. We call him Big Bang Hank. Well, Henry was married, had 2 or 3 kids. He's a scout now, and his daughter runs track at one's at USC and other ones I think is going to go to Georgia. Cool. So he had kids, right? He married, had 2 or 3 kids. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
His locker's next to mine, right? So it'd go Sam Cowart, me, the little chump rookie, where I had 1 stool. They had 2, 3. You know what I mean? I'm up in there.
Get to put their feet up.
Hey, I was like the middle guy, right?
Right.
And Henry had 2 lockers, right? Big Bang Hank, right? He was one of the top paid safeties. We talk all practice, all meetings, talk in the training room, talking, on the plane and all that other stuff. Practice is over. He got, kids at home. He's got to stop at the grocery store. He's got to,
Right.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
His Mondays and Tuesdays are different than mine.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? If he's going to watch tape, he's got to watch it at home. So that's a lot different. When he showed up one time, he had one of those Volvo, kind of like station wagon hatchback. He got baby seats in the back. I'm rolling. I got subwoofers in the back.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? So that's the biggest difference, because it's like you're here. Everybody's kind of like on the team and family, and once you leave, you kind of go off your own ways, and that's the difference.
And that's what it's so interesting about kind of the other side of sports, because there are so many things that happen that people
don't even have an idea.
Yeah, you have no idea. And that's why I wanted to talk about that, because it's just so much stuff that goes into that goes well beyond the product that you end up seeing on Sunday. And it's also unique. Like, everybody is in such a different position. So whoever was 2 more lockers down from
Right,
you
it's totally
was in a
different.
totally different situation.
And that's what sets the
makes
teams
it
apart.
so interesting.
It sets that's why I have so much respect for even like the Patriots, the Patriot way, how they do things. Regardless if look at Tom Brady. He had wife and kids, and there's other guys that had kids and married. Like Willie McGinnis and Teddy Bruschi, but they all found a way to operate within the confines of how they're doing it. And the Patriots knew how to evaluate those players to adapt to what they got going on. Right. Same thing with Pittsburgh. Right?
Yep.
You can't just have a bunch of guys running out here, in bar fights. You have to have a good mix. And they're able to do that. And that's why you see guys from all different walks of life. And what I mean by cultures, growing up backgrounds, that come in and succeed at Pittsburgh, succeed at New England, succeed with the Philadelphia Eagles, now the Kansas City Chiefs, and so forth and so on, is because once they walk in that door, they're welcomed. And that's why you see guys really play. And it's a tight team. You know what I'm saying? Because those guys from Pittsburgh, they hang out, and then once they know, all right, man, all right, I'm hanging out. We've been playing cards. We've been lifting weights. They all lift weights together. All right, 7 o'clock, I got to go home. You know what I'm saying? Versus, some teams, I guarantee you, Dallas Cowboys.
Yeah, they don't look like somebody that's how they're hanging out.
I'm going to tell you what, if the practice is over at 3:15, you're going to see cars leaving that parking lot.
Peeling out the line.
Peeling out. Because the funny thing, I'll say this about the Dallas Cowboys, and you always, sometimes I don't really watch like the guys that try to get the guys all hyped up before the game. But Aldon Smith is the one that does it for the Cowboys. I'm sitting there thinking, like, this dude ain't played in 5 years.
Yeah, that's weird.
5 years. Now, he started off to almost winning. He started off so hot as far as, like, production-wise.
Yeah.
He was going to win. I was thinking he was going to win comeback player of the year and probably defensive player of the year. Because he had like 5 sacks in 2 games, But when you think about the Dallas Cowboys and their culture issues, and there's nothing against Aldon Smith. It's great that he's able to come back from his issues. It's great that Randy Gregory's been able to come back from his issues. But you got a guy that's been out of football for 5 whole years, 5 seasons. One, it's a compliment to him to be able to come back.
Yeah, to be able to actually come back and play
at that level.
NFL, yeah, that's hard.
But the fact that he is a leader on your team lets you know you have absolutely no leadership.
Yeah, you had nothing. There was a void. Somebody had to come into it. Yeah, that's tough.
And Dak Prescott was a leader on the offense, but now he's gone. That lets you know you have zero leadership in that locker room.
Yeah, but they got Jerry. According to Jerry, that's all they need.
Yeah.
But we're going to go ahead and finish this up with the same segment that we like to do every week, my favorite segment every week, and that's Put Them on Blast.
Put them on blast.
So the one that I'm going to go with this week, and I listen, I know that Kevin Warren and the Big Ten have been popular punching bags here recently, and I'm going to add to it. That was not me saying that I'm going to save them. I'm going to add to it because Nebraska, obviously, we started off talking about this, did not play last week. We gave them a victory, even though they didn't get the forfeit, but that's a whole nother discussion. the Big Ten actually got to see all of the talk before the season actually came back about how the Big Ten kind of dropped the ball on protocols, like explaining all of that stuff, and they were so bad, like not explaining anything that was happening. And I kept thinking, okay, yeah, they're bad at this right now, and they need to be doing better. But once we get these games going, it's going to be okay. Like, we might have some issues, but maybe they'll kind of change up and they'll actually start explaining stuff, and they'll adjust.
Or compromise.
Right, which are great words for 2020 that the Big Ten just does not seem to understand, and that's what I don't get. If we've learned anything in this crazy year that is 2020 is that you need to remain flexible, you need to be able to compromise, adjust on the fly, do some unconventional things. And so I don't understand why the Big Ten, I don't fully get why they would not allow Nebraska to add that game that they wanted to add. Because if Nebraska was going to give them tests and Nebraska was going to make sure that UT Chattanooga was healthy and they had already passed that first round of testing the day that Nebraska started talking to them about that game, then okay, we know that the health risks are minimized, or at least as minimized as they can be. So then the Big Ten, they get everything secured, and then the Big Ten says no. But then what did they do again? They didn't explain anything.
Right.
And I don't understand why why the Big Ten is in the position where they think that they don't have to explain anything.
Because they have this like parent mentality when you say, hey, man, can I go?
They do. It sound like my mom.
Can I go stay over at Johnny's house? Nope. Why,
and then
why
just
not?
walk away.
Yeah.
Nope.
And the funny thing is, here, I'll even add a little bit to it. It's almost like, because a little bit they said, okay, well, they gave Nebraska like a checklist, right? So it's like your parent giving you like, okay, you gotta mow the lawn, take out the garbage, clean your bathroom, have your bed made, vacuum your bedroom, and everything, right?
And then you can get
your homework done.
Then you get the car.
Then you can, then come ask me.
Yep.
So you're automatically thinking, okay, well, I'm doing all this. Then you go and like, oh no, why not? Just cause. I told you 2 years.
I have flashbacks when I do that to me.
I've had that conversation. Okay, just cause. Okay, so that's what they just have never. And it's just Big Ten arrogance.
And I think it's arrogance, but it's just the way that the Big Ten has always operated, right?
It's like they've
never had anyone that
don't
had
want to play
rock
football.
the boat.
Let's be honest. The only reason they're playing football is because they were getting destroyed in the media. People were showing up at their front door, and then it started to turn like you made the decision way too long, and then they probably like, you know what, we did.
Just take this.
Just take this. Yeah. But since we're giving you this, we're not gonna be flexible at all. And it's weird because there's always that date. I think it was 2 weeks or 3 weeks earlier to come out with the same schedule with 2 bye weeks.
Yep.
Right. And even look at the original schedule. You know what I mean? Where you had some bye weeks, i.e. why supposedly the Wisconsin players were at a wedding, but that's here nor there. We'll ask Barry about. Can we get Barry on this show? Can we get Slick talking Barry on this show?
If you want to talk to Barry, we could probably try.
We already pulled his Nebraska card, but if he takes an interview with us, then he'll get it back. But but even when they came out with the schedule that they're in now, you got 8 games in 8 weeks, and then it's like, well, we're going to take the average. I mean, the Big Ten is a Power 5 conference. Really, is one of the top 3 conferences. Power 5 conference. You can't go about business like that when you got your other 2 going about as business as usual, rescheduling games with cancellations with stuff already built in, and you've already been watching them do it.
Right.
So I think it's that they reluctantly wanted to play football. Whatever reasons, I think that there's some universities that were kind of on the side of not playing football that can get some things done that Nebraska can't. And I think really also what it comes into it with the lack of wins and the also Nebraska, I would say, with Ohio State kind of being on the forefront of getting us to be playing football, or people thinking that, or it's kind of like what they say, the squeaky wheel always gets gets noticed or whatever, and so it's really kind of rubbed them the wrong way. So you're not getting any favors. And really, to be honest with you, Nebraska had been successful in the last 2 years. You probably would have got a little bit more of explanation and probably maybe got the job done. Now I'm gonna tell you this, and it probably won't get to this point, but if Ohio State say they won an ugly game, I don't know, say against Purdue, right? I don't even know if they're playing Purdue, and Illinois can't play, and they needed a blowout victory against Illinois to get to the Final Four, they'd be playing Meatloaf State.
That's where
they will be playing Meatloaf State, and all these protocols would magically go away. I'm telling you.
So curious to see if that happens. And I know that a lot of Nebraska fans believe that.
But the more games that Ohio State plays, if they get to 5 or 6 games, they're already there. So they're already in the Big Ten championship. But I'm just saying, if Ohio State was in that position, in the position that Nebraska wanted to get in or was in, they would have got those games. That's for sure. Ain't no doubt about it.
I think
Gene Smith is a powerful player, man.
Well, the brand is powerful because that it helps everybody if they go to the Final Four and if they do well. And so it would be such an interest. But now the Big Ten, in theory, has put themselves in a corner. They set the precedent. But I'm with you. The same way that magically that 21-day situation is starting to be talked about. Right. I think that you would start to get some sort of wiggle room on that. But who are you putting on blast?
I'm putting on blast. I'm putting your boy Pat Forty, man.
Oh.
I don't know.
Wait, hold on. Wait. Time out. That's not my boy.
Not your boy.
Yeah, okay. Let me make sure people realize. I know what you mean, but I want people to understand.
This guy, Pat Forty. I mean, the first article, I get it, right? Because you just want to. I know and if you don't know, he wrote an article about Nebraska. You know, how dare do they try to play? You know, pretty much putting the Nebraska people, the Nebraska fans, Scott Frost, like, you know, we're a lower level team and we can't get past the 90s. I get it, right? Because everybody was writing that. Mm-hmm. So it's easy to kind of, you know, he's probably back. You know, I think he's an East Coast guy, so he's up there, nothing to do. He needs to get his articles in. You know, he's got to have something written. So he kind of just diced up what everybody else has been saying or doing for a couple weeks and then put his name on it, right?
Right.
He's a basketball guy. You should be thinking about Louisville and everybody else trying to get going, right? How the Big Ten ACC got canceled, and you should have a problem with that. Never once has he written about Iowa, okay? Really hadn't had anything to say about Michigan State. Probably kind of just glossed at the whole Penn State thing. Is like, oh, man, you know what? I got basketball to coverage, right? Penn State coach, basketball. Right. Hadn't said anything about that.
Michigan State.
But you have a lot to say about a university and a coach that wants to coach football and players that want to play football. And obviously we just talked about this. Then he comes out with this other article, like, how dare Nebraska ask again? We haven't learned our lesson.
They call him a petulant child?
Yeah, petulant child. Well, okay, we'll be the petulant child. Okay, that's fine. You go and give us that. We're the petulant child that's done everything that you asked us to do, and then we're just asking for what you kind of promised or what anybody would ask once you've been given tasks to do, right? Go find your opponent, find them in strict, obviously protocols, and come back to us. And then they pass all the tests. All right, that's a petulant child. In this day and time, with everything that's going on, those are the kind of kids I want, okay? Everybody would sign up for them. Even the people that don't have kids, you know what? I'll adopt that petulant child. Right. Okay, then what are you, Pat 40? Are you the scorned girlfriend that got turned down for the prom and you're 43 years old and you finally run into the Brock, the high school stud that used to wear his leather jacket, and you wanted him to ask you, and he didn't ask you. He didn't know you, but he should have known you, and you haven't been able to get over it, and you're at your 25-year high school reunion, hammered out your mind, and now you're just laying it all out there. What has happened to him at Nebraska or somebody that went to Nebraska that he can't get over? Because something's happened. Somebody either dated a girlfriend of his or I'm going to tell you like this. It's like when I fly into Denver. I hate going into Denver because I've had the worst turbulence going in there, right? So anybody at Denver, I always kind of look at them sideways. So either you had a long layover in Omaha, ate a bad steak and got some diarrhea at Airfield, right? No, I'm just saying.
I know.
He bought Omaha steaks there and he got some diarrhea when he got home, right? Or had a bad time down at the Brass Rail and had too many drinks and threw up.
He did go to Missouri.
Well, there it is. See,
I was waiting. I was just because I just want to put that out there. I'm not saying. I'm just saying.
About Missouri. My brother was in Kirksville, Missouri, in med school.
Yeah,
and I went through Columbia. This is no joke. I flew in there and I was driving. I saw the Columbia. I stopped at the sign. And I took a leak on the sign just because of people in Missouri. I'm gonna tell you, we played down there one time. I had 4 friends from college go down there. Right, 3 brothers and one of the other guys was white. He said they have never been talked to like that before in their life. All 4 of them got into scraps. So since he's from Missouri, that just, that explains everything.
There we go.
He's he's from Missouri. What does Coach Osmond calls him, Missouri or Missouri?
Missouri.
He called him Missouri. Probably. He's from Missouri. You're probably supposed to say Missouri. He's actually from Missouri. He's probably from like the Ozarks somewhere, man. Up there in Branson. He's one of them type of dudes. He got some issues.
There's an axe to grind there. There's definitely an axe to grind. We're gonna get to the bottom of this. We're gonna figure it out.
Somebody got some pictures of him.
Something.
If he was at Missouri when we were there, he's got some issues.
Maybe that's where the genesis of it is. That's where it started.
Yeah.
That's where it started.
He
wasn't there during the Brad Smith years.
Or Gene, yeah, right. I know, but he's got some issues, man. Is he still mad that that number one team that Missouri had, they lost in the round of 32 in basketball or something like that? Maybe. I mean, I don't know what it is. I mean, dude got some issues.
I mean, I think you speak for every Nebraska fan listening to this that they believe that Pat Forty has some issues. But that's a good spot to leave it for this week. We're gonna figure it out. We're gonna figure out what the genesis of it is.
And his brother from another mother. I guess I'll joke about it jokingly. His brother from another mother, Desmond Coward, got a little bit of COVID. I hope he's all right though.
Don't do my man Desmond like that.
I'm petty Pat right now because he's from Michigan. Because Michigan people still think they won a national championship. Yeah, so I'm petty Pat right now. I'm Petty Patrick right now. That's me.
Petty Patrick. We might have just came up with the title of this show, but I need y'all to subscribe to this podcast everywhere that you listen to them. Rate us and leave us a 5-star review. If you only leave 4, I'll be like Jay and think I'll be a Petty Pat and think that you're a hater. Make sure that you're checking out all the other podcasts on the Hail Varsity Network, Mind Your Own Podcast, Varsity Club, More to It, and the Hail Varsity Radio Show. We also have an email. You can email us your suggestions and thoughts, maybe your conspiracy theories about Pat Forty at straightupbreakdown@hailvarsity.com. You can also find us on Twitter at Greg Smith HV and at Foreman5644. We will catch you next time.